So now we're going to move on to the next part. So we got the right grass. We went through. We called our buddy up, and he said, "This is the grass we want." Um, so now it comes to mowing that grass and how we mow correctly. I mean, really, if we're thinking about how to maintain a good lawn, it really comes down to: are we mowing properly? Are we managing our water and nutrients properly? Are we managing our soil properly? If we're doing all of those things correctly, our reliance on pesticides and other inputs goes way down. So if we can do the big three properly, mow, water, and fertilize, it's not that difficult to have a really nice lawn with lower inputs. Darn thing. All right, so here's our kind of our picture again of our turfgrass plant. Kind of a little blurry when I blew it up, it looks like. But you can see this would be a bluegrass plant. You have a rhizome. We have a tiller, which is kind of a stack of leaves coming off of our crown, our growing point. Here we have our roots coming through. So we're mowing. We're trying to mow, just the tops of the blades and not get into this crown or the sheaths or the stems. Again, places where the thatch is made. Animals are actually amazing mowers. They've always been, or they've co-evolved with the grass. So when we talk about grass likes to be mowed around 2 inches, well, this turns out that animals mow it about 2 inches with their teeth. So there's that co-evolution going on here to say when grass wants to be about 2 inches, that's why, because these are the sheep at Whistling Straits, and they're having a great old time just mowing that grass to 1.5 to 2 inches at a really nice clean cut with those nice teeth of theirs. And so this is how grass stays in a vegetative state, is through this constant mowing by animals. So then if you had an estate and you wanted to be a famous prince or king or something in Palace of Versailles, you'd have a whole flock of sheep that would go out and take care of your grounds. But then sheep make messes and it's a pain in the butt. So then they would go and they hired guys, or they might probably enslaved guys, or something like that, where then they went with a scythe and they actually went through and they would do this all day long to keep that grass right at a nice height, keep it in that vegetative state so it's not going to seed. As you can imagine, this would be a terrible job and not a lot of fun. So then there was this guy named Edward Budding in the 1800s that thought there's got to be a better way to mow. And so he saw that when they were making carpet, you think of like a plush carpet, they need all the strands to be about the same height. And they had this kind of reel set up where the carpet would get mowed off so that it would be nice and uniform height. And so this reel is going to be spinning, and there's going to be a bed knife on the bottom. And then as the carpet would get contacted by the reel spinning, hitting that square bed knife, it would cut like a scissors. And so he thought, well, maybe I could do that with to mow the lawn. And so you can see this is one of the first lawn mowers here. It's obviously a push type of a mower. You can imagine how heavy and uncomfortable this would be. So you got one guy working the back, and he's going to be using this to steer. And then you have this little handle thing hanging off the front. You have 2 more guys on each side pulling. So it's a 3-person job to get this mower going through the grass. So it sounds absolutely terrible to us, right? But to them, this is a great advantage, and this is light years above of scything your fields. We've then continued to automate mowers, and so this type of John Deere mower here, these golf mowers, we're setting them to the 1,000th of an inch. A golf course putting green is mowed between 90 or 900ths and 1200ths of an inch with a precision of less than 2 or 3 thousandths of an inch. So they are precision machines mowing at a very, very tight level. And then, but the problem with that is they need a lot of maintenance to do that. You need to make sure our reel here that's spinning is contacting that bed knife just right, not too tight, not too loose. Setting it requires a specialized equipment. And so we've seen, the real rise of the rotary mower. And so the rotary mower is pretty much like a mechanical scythe. It's just spinning really quickly. It's standing the grass up and then just cutting it with the speed of the rotary blade. And so it really is kind of a pretty good mower for a lot of medium intensity type applications. If you're more of a lower maintenance where you just need to get things mowed, a flail mower is really good. This is kind of similar to our scythe, but instead of the blades spinning in a rotary fashion. They're spinning up and down. That way, if they hit something, they can kick up. So they hit a rock, it doesn't snap your mower deck. When it comes to mowing, one of the most important things we can do, aside from making sure our mower is set to the right height, is that happens a lot too. I mean, I'm not guilty, or I'm guilty of that also, where you got the front wheel set different than your back wheels, and it's mowing like crazy. So that's an obvious thing. We need to make sure we got our mower's wheels set the right height. But then we got to make sure that we have a nice sharp mower blade. This is a good example of a sharp blade. Just nice and uniform is really there. You can see a nice continuous blade like you'd want on a knife. You can see these blades are getting more and more dull. And so this is going to be ripping the turf, and it's not cutting it cleanly. And that's going to open up wounds for diseases and insects and other pathogens and pests to come in and really reduce the quality of the turf grass. This is kind of an example of that. So here's our nicely cut tall fescue leaf. Here's a situation where we have a very dull mower, and it's coming through and it's hitting the leaf, and then instead of cutting it, it just bends it over. And so all the vasculature in here is broken, and so everything upstream of that dead vasculature is going to slowly die, and we're going to have this big dead leaf hanging there, and the next day it's going to look absolutely terrible. Some of the grasses too, if they're not sharp enough, they're pretty tough to cut through, and so we'll see this kind of tissue hanging off here, looking really brown, and it'll give this brown appearance to the entire turf. So the question about things like crested wheat grasses, they have a lot of this very tough tissue, and so you need to have a very tough mower, and even then you'll still see a lot of this fraying happening, and it makes the whole lawn just look kind of brownish yellow and not very good. So having good mowing, though, is important. Having a good mowing program is important. It increases appearance, but it also improves leaf density. The more we mow, the lower we mow, we get an increase in density. It removes damaged leaves. That's how the plant recovers from traffic. Like, my big dogs, right now the grasses aren't growing and the grass is in really bad shape. It starts to grow again. Now that mowing promotes new growth, so I can mow the dead stuff off, let it decompose and cycle into the soil, and return nutrients and stimulate further growth. It also prevents seed heads, which keeps the grass in a juvenile state, so that it doesn't, so it keeps it nice and dense. When the grasses go to seed, they're going to thin out, they're going to change their morphology, and so mowing very infrequently is not going to lead to a very dense lawn, and not dense lawn is not going to hold that soil. So that's a real risk to the environment when we're not holding our soil together. So this is one of the questions that I've always wondered about, was does mowing height and frequency impact growth rate? And this whole question came up from a discussion that my dad had with his partner. My dad's kind of this gruff, retired now police officer, detective, and him and his partner were sitting around our pool and they were drinking. And they were trying to figure out, what was the best way to mow the lawn so that it wouldn't grow quickly. So my dad's partner loved to mow all the time. So he'd mow, twice a week, 3 times a week. And so his lawn always looked perfect. But he insisted that frequent mowing actually resulted in less growth rate relative to my dad's method, which was let it get up nice and tall, you scalp it down. It results in less mowing because you're mowing it less frequently and you're scalping it. But also it's going to grow slower because it's going to get tall and then it's going to start to slow down before you scalp it. And so I've always kind of wondered about that. So we have 2 different rationales here for which one would be more beneficial. Do you do frequent mowing to increase growth rate because it's less stressful than scalping? Or does scalping cause lower growth rate because the scalping is out there is causing that grass to slow down its growth rate because it's not being mowed as frequently? The alternative is we always say mow to the 1/3 rule. This is something that you'll see in all the turf textbooks dating back to 1973. Jim Beard's turf, first, main important turfgrass textbook that we teach in our class or classes to our undergrads. We'll say you need to mow to the 1/3 rule for the best healthy turf with providing the minimal amount of mowing and the slowest growth rate. But that was never tested. There's a lot of stuff like that in the turf industry. You always think like, oh, it's in the textbook, but they never actually did any research to verify that. So we wanted to actually test these different rationales. So here's some research that we did here in Nebraska on tall fescue, done up for 3 years, where some of our plots are mowed at 2 inches, some of our plots are mowed at 3 inches, and then, they're either mowed, some of the plots are mowed weekly, some are mowed to the quarter rule, some are mowed to the third rule, and some are to the half rule. So what does that really mean? So that means if you're mowing at 2 inches, you would mow the plots at the quarter rule to 2.2 2/3 inches. When it got to there, you mow back to 2 inches. If your grass got to 4 inches, you mow it back to 3 inches. There's the third rule, which is kind of the way we recommend doing it. So you could say, the grass got to 3 inches, you mow it back to 2 inches. The grass grows to 4.5 inches, you mow to 3 inches. So we just tested these different kind of rules to figure out what was going to be the best. So this is what the whole study looked like. It's a nightmare to mow. You can imagine every day we got to go out and check all the plots and then just mow a couple of them and then mow a couple over here, a couple over there, don't mow the other ones. So it's not a lot of fun, but the results were pretty interesting. So this is what the plots look like. This is my PhD student, Glenn, presenting at our field day. If anybody's interested in never coming to our field day, we have it in July on East Campus, and we talk about lawn care and all kinds of different field, athletic field, sports turf, golf turf research. And so if you're really interested in the turf, if you can come, and we have those world famous Wahoo wieners too. So come enjoy field day. So at the end of the season, then we scalped all the turf ground, either 2 or 3 inches. And every time we mowed, we kept track of how much grass we got. So in the first year of our study, and we've done this now for 2 more years, and we see very similar results, we looked at the total number of mowings. So if we mowed weekly at 2 inches, we had to mow 18 times over the course of the season. If we mowed to the quarter rule, so you're removing a quarter of the leaf at one mowing, we had to mow 23 times in the season. And then the third rule resulted in 14 mowings, and the half rule resulted in 6 mowings. But the 6 mowings led to significant scalping, so we had a real big reduction in turf grass quality. Whereas the 1/3 rule and the others had acceptable quality. So if you're trying to give good acceptable, it seemed like the 1/3 rule was correct. We weren't getting scalping, but we were mowing less than weekly. Same thing with the 3-inch height. Now we have just slightly less mowing going on at 3 inches, but again, very similar trends. No scalpings going on except for the half rule, which we mowed 5 times in that year. When it came to cumulative growth rate, though, or total amount of clippings, you have, when we started to mow till when the study ended, all of the treatments, regardless of mowing height and frequency, grew at about the same rate, except for these blue lines. That's where we scalped. So actually, by scalping led to more growth, and it led to more, reduction in quality, more weeds. More growth means the plant needed more nutrients. It means the plants needed more water. It means the plants were more likely to have competition from weeds. And so, maintaining that 1/3 rule really is the most effective way to minimize our inputs on our lawn. That means sometimes maybe we don't have to mow every single week. You could skip a mowing here or there. That said, you might not want to because you don't want to mow. You only want to mow on your Saturday or Sunday. And so then weekly is fine. But if you're really trying to minimize your inputs, getting off of a weekly mowing schedule is going to allow you to minimize those inputs and still have a really nice looking lawn with I don't know, I can't end that sentence. So it's going to look nice. It's weird when you're talking to nobody. Sometimes you just ramble on. Mowing, so for best management, mowing at 2 to 3 inches is really like where we say to mow. You'll hear people say, well, university says mow as high as the mower deck can go. Okay, fine, that's true. It's because most people don't mow right. And so we have to just dumb down our recommendations to say mow as high as you possibly can. You guys are nearly professionals. You are master gardeners. You are better than that. Know that, your grasses like to be mowed between 2 and 3 inches. Even bluegrass really likes to be mowed at 1.5 inches. It doesn't like to be mowed much less than that unless you're mowing like several times a week. But 2 to 3 inches is really where you want to be because that's going to maximize density and that's going to keep those darn weeds out and reduce our water use. So if we're mowing to the 1/3 rule, You're going to mow it to, when the grass gets to 3 to 4.5 inches, you're going to mow it back to 2 or 3 inches. Okay. I mow my lawn at 2.5 inches. I think it's a nice appearance. If I want to tighten it up to look nice and show off to the neighbors, I'll knock it down to 2 inches and I'll keep it there for the rest of the year. I won't go lower than that. I won't go any higher than that. Does a pretty good job. Finally, with mowing, we got to return our clippings. Returning clippings adds a lot of fertilizer back to the soil. And so, we need to be recycling. And returning clippings is so important. Nothing frustrates me more. And I actually go up to my neighbors and tell them, put the bag away, mulch mow. And they all go, well, is it going to cost thatch? No, it's not. I have a PhD in turf. It doesn't cost thatch. Trust me. If you're scalping, it might, see the piles of grass on top. That's a problem. But if you're mowing right, the 1/3 rule, stop bagging. All right. So a question here from Nicole said a master gardener just had a tree removed from their lawn, and now they have channels in the lawn from where the heavy equipment left tire tracks. Is there anything they should or can do to help to remove those tracks and reduce the compaction? There's not a lot that we can really do. We can try to aerate it. Honestly, it's not going to do a heck of a lot at all. The winter freezing and thawing of the soil is the best thing that we can do, and let nature take care of that itself. It will work its way out. If it's really bad, you could try a pitchfork to try to actually move and try to break that soil up. Just going out with a drum aerator is not going to do a heck of a lot because it's going to pound through those areas. It might go an inch or so deep. It's not really deep enough to hit the compaction, which is probably going to be 3 or 4 inches deep. That's where the real compaction is going to be from the heavy equipment. But letting the freeze and the thaw cycles just do their thing is going to really help out a lot. Light compost applications might help out too. Don't go too heavy. You don't want to have a big layer of compost there. But that can help to improve that site.